Welcome to the next live webinar here with the Aspiring Leaders. Tonight, we are so lucky to have Jon Harper on. He's going to talk to us this evening. I'm going to let Jon introduce himself here in a second. But Jon, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your story about vulnerability. We're very lucky to have you and as part of our cohort. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me, Jodie. This project you're doing is amazing.
Well, thank you. And we'll just turn it over to you and share with us a little bit about yourself, and then you'll have it from here.
Absolutely. Okay. So as Jodie said, my name is Jon Harper. I am an assistant principal on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. This is probably my 21st year in education. I spent 10 years in the classroom, teaching first all the way to 5th grade. After that, I was a math coach for, I think, about 3 or 4 years. And now I'm in my, I think, 7th or 8th year as an assistant principal. For those of you that are aspiring leaders, you're probably wondering, I don't even know the exact number because I lose track. But this is, I think, my 7th or 8th year as an assistant principal. And I guess I'm on here tonight to talk about vulnerability. And vulnerability is a very important topic to me. It's something that means a lot to me. And it's something that hit home and resonated probably about 4 years ago. I was at a soccer practice with my daughter who was in 3rd grade at the time. And she had never played soccer before. And she went out to practice. And after the first practice, we realized she was the only girl on the team. But that was okay, because the coach was amazing and she had a great time. And then after probably the 2nd or 3rd practice, we realized, well, wait a minute, she's probably the only one who's never played soccer before. But like I said, the coach was absolutely amazing. He included her in everything, and we couldn't have asked for more. And I'll never forget, I was watching a practice about halfway through the year. And the team is scrimmaging one another. And I look over, and my daughter scores a goal for the wrong team. And I thought, oh my gosh, my little 8-year-old girl, the only girl out there, the only one who has never played soccer before is going to be mortified. How is she going to handle this? And I was nervous. I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? I had my best Disney dad speech in mind when she came over. I was thinking, Jon, you really got to save this moment. You got to figure this out. And about 5 or 10 minutes later, she came over and she was walking towards me, and I was nervous and I was thinking, oh my God, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And she looked at me and she said, Daddy, I too. And I thought, what? She said, Daddy, I too scored a goal for the other team. And then it hit me that probably 6 months prior, I had shared with her how when I was in high school, I scored a goal for the wrong team in sudden death overtime that lost our team the game. And the moment was so powerful because I thought, you know what, if I hadn't shared that with my daughter, maybe she would have felt really bad about her mistake. She wasn't happy about it, but the fact that she knew that her daddy made that same mistake wasn't any big deal to her. And so I didn't need any Disney dad speech. I didn't need anything like that. And that led me probably about 5 or 6 months later to think about having a podcast called My Bad, in which I have guests come on and they share huge mistakes. And I can't tell you what an honor it is to have people come on and share moments that are very difficult to talk about, very difficult to reveal. They show their vulnerable side. And traditionally we think of vulnerability as weakness. But I think what's been able to happen through My Bad and through other venues is that people see that actually vulnerability is a strength. And I often blog about vulnerability. One of my very first pieces that I blogged about vulnerability was called The Masks We Wear. And it was a piece that I wrote about having anxiety. And I was actually inspired to write it by several other authors. But anxiety was something that I still have. And I'll be honest, I take medication for it, and I still deal with it day to day. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I was really having an incredibly difficult time with it. I'll never forget waking up one morning. I was shivering. I was shaking. I couldn't relax my brain. I had no idea what was going on. I don't know why. I've got a wonderful life, but I was feeling incredible anxiety. And I finally reached the point where I said, you know what, John, you can't do this by yourself. You've got to let other people know, because I had been blogging probably for a year or two. And all the while I had a lot of this anxiety, and I'm sure nobody ever knew. And probably the worst thing that I did was I didn't let other people know about this, besides, you know, my wife and my kids and whatnot. I didn't lean on other people for support. And so the piece that I wrote was called The Masks We Wear, because oftentimes, you know, we wear these masks at work where we put on the happy face, and we have to, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know, for our students, for our staff members, for our colleagues. But I think a lot of times we don't take advantage of the fact that there are people around us that we can lean on, that can give us support. And showing that vulnerability has been a really good thing for me, because, you know, I'm not the only person that has anxiety. And when I share that with staff members who I think, you know, might or are going through something very similar, I think it reassures them, and it makes them feel like, you know what, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not sick. There's nothing, you know, sometimes I think in our society for men to admit something like that, and women, but I think too often it's a macho thing. Like, you know what, or at least it was for me. I thought, you know what, John, there's something weak about you if you're feeling this anxiety. And that was the most foolish thing I could have ever thought. That there was nothing nothing weak about having anxiety. And so I began to realize that, you know what, you got to share this, John, with people. And when I put that piece out there, a lot of other folks were happy that I put that out there, because they say, you know what, John, I can relate. I know exactly what you're talking about. Thank you so much for saying that. And each week I'm lucky. People come on and they share some of the most incredible stories, and they share mistakes that I'm sure until they come on the show, people are really surprised to hear. For example, my very first guest was Todd Whitaker. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a way to start off a show with Todd Whitaker. I mean, Todd Whitaker is somebody, pretty much, if he says it, I do it. If he says it, it's truth to me. And Todd Whitaker came on and talked about how when he was a head basketball coach, he lost his temper and he got a technical foul. And I thought, what? This is the same Todd Whitaker who says, you know, you have to treat people well 30 times out of 30, because not one time out of 30 you mess up and they're never going to forget it. You can't just treat people well 29 times out of 30. It has to be every single time. And for him to come on and share something like that was amazing to me. And each week that happens, folks come on and they share stories. And the thing is, I think oftentimes we see people at their best, especially through social media, through Twitter, through Facebook, through Instagram, on TV, or whatever. We see everybody's best side, and we compare ourselves to everyone's best side instead of thinking, you know, what we miss is the journey in between. And what I hope My Bad does is it allows people to see that, you know what, a lot of these people that we see in the media, people that you may not have ever heard of, they make mistakes just like you and I. I mean, Todd Whitaker got a technical foul and yelled at a coach. I have people that come on and they make mistakes that, I mean, they're unbelievable. You're thinking, what? Like, for example, Eric Schenninger, when he was a high school principal at New Milford in New Jersey, he was the person that wrote the no cell phone policy for his district. Now, people that haven't heard that are probably thinking, what? Eric Schenninger wrote that policy? And some people might already know that. But he came on and shared that mistake and talked about how he used to be basically the technology czar. He would go around the school and just collect everyone's phones, everyone's computers. And you hear something like that and you think, how is that possible? He's the guy, I mean, he's a digital pioneer. He's changed the way a lot of us look at technology today. And so it's mistakes like that I want people to hear and realize, you know what, we all make them. And I want people to learn from the mistakes that they hear each week on My Bad. But more than anything, I want them to realize that we all make mistakes. And what I've found, there's 6 different kinds of mistakes, and I'm not going to go through them all now. I don't want to go through all that. I don't want to bore everyone with that. But there's patterns. And the thing is, a lot of times the people that we see on social media, the thing that they're known for, the thing that they're known for being the strongest in, they were actually weak in at one point. And I want people to hear that and realize, you know what, when you're feeling down, when you're feeling like, you know what, I just screwed up today. I hollered at this kid, or I did this, or I did that. All these other folks have been there too. And look where they are now. Because my philosophy is that mistakes have the power to rouse us and to strengthen us. And it's really hard to see that in the moment. And I want people to listen to my bad and think that. I want people to, I'll be honest, I'm working on a book right now. And when people read the book, I'm hoping to have this out in a couple months. I want them to read this and realize, you know what? I'm just like this person. I'm just like that person. Okay. Maybe I'm not so bad. Yes, I lost my temper one day at this kid, but that doesn't mean I'm a horrible person. I need to correct it. I need to move forward. But we all make these big mistakes. Todd Neslony, he's another person. He was one of my first guests. His moniker is Tech Ninja Todd. And yet one of his biggest mistakes when he came on, he talked about how he had a summer where he went to all these conferences and learned about all these incredible gadgets. And he went back to school the next year and tried to use probably 10 or 20 of them. And he said it was horrible, John. He said, John, they bombed. Todd said, I was about ready to give up on every single one of these things. And he talked to someone, a mentor of his, and they said, Todd, just try a couple of them. Try one or two. And, to hear someone like that come on, to hear these folks come on and share mistakes in areas in which we think, oh my gosh, these people are known for being strong in this area. How could they have ever possibly have made mistakes in that area? Well, you know what? We all do. And we don't always think that. In the moment, we think we're the only ones that could have possibly made that mistake. I've got a quote that I love by Anna Quinlan. And basically, she said that the thing that is really hard and really amazing is giving up on being perfect and beginning the work of being yourself. And it's such an incredible quote. I wish I had written that myself. It's an absolutely beautiful, amazing quote. And I can't tell you how powerful being vulnerable is. Now, I also know it's very, very difficult because in today's society, people are judged, people are evaluated. I've had people say, well, I'm scared to say this because someone might write me up. I'm scared to do that because I'm worried it's going to come out on my evaluation. And I hear that, and that's definitely true. And so I guess we do have to be careful. But I think as leaders, as aspiring leaders, as colleagues, we need to create conditions in which it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to make a mistake. Because another thing, when you hear other people make mistakes, when you hear about these mistakes, it gives other people the right, the courage to do the same thing. It also allows you to grant them a little bit of grace. I'm going to be honest, I had a mistake, I think it was last year. In all my 20 years, I've never done this, but last year, I got so angry, I lost my temper, and I cursed at a child. I'm probably going to have 5 or 10 of you leave this conversation right now because you're thinking, I don't want to hear from someone who cursed at a child. I have never done that in my 20 years. It was embarrassing. It was humiliating. I called the kid's mom. I had her come out to school. I apologized to her. But I'm bringing this up to say, you know what? We all have moments where we lose it. And there are moments when I observe other folks lose it now as an administrator. And I think back to that time, you know what, John, you lost it last year. You acted like a fool. And it allows me to give them a little bit of grace. It doesn't make it okay. But it allows me to think, you know what, okay, John, you've been there. You know what that's like. It's not something that I'm proud of. Mistakes aren't something that we try to make, but there's something that they're necessary. They're necessary in writing. They're necessary in math. They're necessary in interactions every day. They're necessary in courageous conversations. We talk about courageous conversations often in this country, but if we're not in an environment, if we're not creating an environment in which it's safe to make a mistake, then we're never going to have these conversations. Talking about race, talking about diversity, talking about sexuality. You can't have these conversations, excuse me, and not make mistakes. You're going to make them. But if you're around people that trust you, that love you, that know you're good in your heart, then they're going to forgive you and you're going to talk through that because you're going to make mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes I've found, and one that I've been guilty of, and I'm sure some of you have been, is not knowing someone's full story before you act. And I've had numerous guests come on and talk about how they reacted, how they interacted with someone before knowing their full story. One of my very first ones, one of the most powerful episodes I think it's ever been recorded on my bed, was with a woman named Maggie Bellato, who I just think is dear friend of mine. I'll be honest, I've never met her in person, but she's someone that I connected with right away. She's a teacher in Texas. And she talked about one of the first, well, I think her first or second year when she was teaching. I think it was 6th grade science. And she had a girl who would come to class, and she didn't take very good care of herself. And Maggie reminded her, she said, you know what, this is not how young ladies act. You need to take better care of yourself. You need to, I guess she was very unkempt, is what she said. And it's important to know this is the Maggie before the Maggie is now. And she would talk to her. She's like, you know what, you can't come to school this way. And she said she noticed one day she was walking by her desk, and this girl had reached the point where she had bugs jumping off of her, bugs crawling out of her hair, which we know is probably lice. And it's something that can't always be helped. But Maggie was a young teacher. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm back. Maggie was a young teacher, and she was still growing. And so she called the young girl out in the hallway, and she said, look, I've told you numerous times, you've got to take better care of yourself. This is not how young ladies act. Young ladies take care of themselves. And she noticed the girl started tearing up. The girl started having some, her eyes were welling up, and she thought, wow, I must have really hit a nerve here. And she said, what's the problem? Do you not take showers at home? And the girl looked at her, and she said, Miss Bellato, no, I don't. I don't take showers at home because whenever I try to go in the bathroom, my mom's boyfriend tries to take advantage of me. It's an unbelievable story to hear, and it's hard for me almost not to tear up talking about it, but it's a story that I think is necessary to tell because there's so many times we don't know someone's story. And to know Maggie now is to know that she's one of the most caring individuals you'll ever see. If you follow her Twitter feed, everything is about kids. Everything is positive. And for her to come on and share that story with me, to be so vulnerable, was amazing. And, Maggie is a totally different person. She said from that day forward, she changed completely. Within a couple of years, she took a group of young ladies to the White House because they invented an app that they had designed for a student at their school that was blind, that helped him navigate around the school. But a mistake like that, you hear that and you think, oh my gosh, how could someone possibly make that mistake? But we've all made mistakes like that where we don't know someone's full story. And the vulnerability that she showed, I thought that's one of the most amazing episodes to date for me. Because obviously it's not a moment she's proud of. But she knew that when she shared that, other people are going to hear that. Because I'm quite certain other people, we've all had moments like that where we felt, honestly, we felt like crap afterwards. Because we realized, oh my gosh, I didn't know. I had no idea. To show that, to hear people come on and share something like that, it's just, the fact that they trust me with their story is such a gift. And Maggie said something in that episode that's resonated with me. She said, the moment the words leave your mouth, they lose all their power over you. And what she meant by that was the moment that you share your mistake, they don't weigh you down as much anymore. Doesn't mean that your mistake goes away. It doesn't mean that you still didn't make your mistake. It doesn't mean that you need to move forward and do better. But it doesn't eat at you. And I can't tell you how, it's difficult. It's difficult to share mistakes because, like I said earlier, we're in this day and age where we want to show our best side. We want to show, we're in the day and age of selfies where everyone wants to show everything being perfect, and everything isn't perfect. And I know this is for aspiring leaders, and those of you that are aspiring leaders, everything is not perfect. Especially when you first start off, you're going to mess up a lot. And the best thing you can do is you're going to want to apologize to parents and students and colleagues a lot. But it's so important for us, I call it stepping first. It's so important for us to step first as teachers, as parents, as leaders, as supervisors, as administrators. Because if others see us stepping first and being vulnerable and sharing mistakes, they say, well, wait a minute, maybe this is okay. This is a safe place. Maybe it's okay for me to share a mistake. Imagine that power in your classroom, in your school, in your classroom. If you have kids coming up to you and saying, you know what, I really messed up. I shouldn't have done that. Then another kid hears that, and then another kid hears that. And all of a sudden, you've created an environment in which it's safe to share mistakes. Well, that's an unbelievable environment. And you're going to reach much higher levels than if people are always worried about sharing mistakes. Because the mistakes are going to be made. So they're either going to be hidden from you or they're going to share them with you. And I think also as a teacher, it's important because a lot of times, and an administrator, a lot of times others don't see us, say administrators, or especially teachers, as capable of making mistakes. And I say that for teachers, not administrators, because I make a lot of mistakes. But a lot of times kids, especially in the younger grades and even upper grades, they think, you know what, I never see so-and-so make a mistake. Everything they put on the board is perfect. They never admit a fault. They never do this. They never do that. And then their self-esteem drops. It's very tough. It's very tough. And you know what? My hope is that those of you listening to this, those of you that might listen to my bad, you hear that and you realize, you know what? There is a lot of power in that. Because I'll be honest, it's changed my life. I feel 100 times better knowing that, you know what? I can admit a mistake. And I'm not proud of them, but they don't weigh me down. They don't weigh me down anymore because they can. You think, you know what? I'm the only person that ever let my ego get in the way. That's another category. We have mistakes where our ego just gets in the way. We have mistakes where power gets in the way, where we have to be the person in charge. We have mistakes sometimes that creep from nowhere. They come right out of the blue on us. We have mistakes where we think we're the only ones out there and we don't lean on others. And that was my mistake, like I said early on in the beginning with anxiety. And I've had numerous episodes where people have come on and talked about, I really didn't reach out to others. I didn't allow myself to grieve. I didn't allow myself to open up, to share with other folks. I'll give you another example. Lana Stanton came on one time and talked about how her mistake was she did not allow herself to grieve. And she was inspired by her principal who had gone through a very difficult time. And I'm not going to go into all the details of that, but he inspired her because he was able to lean on his staff and lean on his community during an amazingly difficult time. And she realized that she had not done that in the past. She came on my bad and she shared that she had had several miscarriages. And each time, she and her husband went to school the next day. And in hindsight, she said, I can't even imagine why I did that. And she didn't allow herself to grieve. She didn't really share it with others. And that is a private thing, not that she would share that with others, but she didn't bring others into it. She didn't lean on others. And she's changed. She's changed. She says, I'm a totally different person now. I've observed others around me, and I see them going through difficult times, and I tell them, you know what, you've got to take a day. You've got to take some time for yourself. And she's that person that other folks can lean on now. So it's just, it's so important that there's so many pressures out there. There's so many pressures out there, and our kids are feeling more and more and more. Adults are feeling more and more and more pressure. And I think one of the one thing we can do is say, you know what, it's okay to make mistakes. And those of you listening here, like I said, and those of you that might listen to my bad, those of you that listen later on, be vulnerable. Be that person to step. And when someone comes and sits down with you, say, you know what, I've been there. I've done that. I made that same mistake too. Or, you know, volunteer it. And you're thinking, well, John, why on earth would I stand up? But it doesn't need to be a staff meeting. It could be a one-on-one sit down with someone. And you can share that. It could be a staff meeting. If you're a leader, you could say, you know what, everybody, I messed up. Yesterday I did this and I was wrong. What you gain by that is an amazing amount of respect and an amazing amount of power is not the right word, but I think, you know, influence, because people see you as someone who is fallible, someone who makes mistakes, and people can relate to you more. You know, they hear you say that mistake, and people are going to be, they're going to be nodding their head. They're going to be like, yep, I've been there. I've been there. I mean, I can see Jodie right now. She's nodding her head. And what that's called is neural coupling. When you and the person listening, that they can relate and they nod their head. They've been through the same thing before. Because I am certain you're going to make a mistake next week. You're going to make a mistake next month. And you're going to think, oh my gosh, I'm a bozo. How could I have done that? You're going to think, oh my gosh, Todd Whitaker would have never done that. You're going to think, let me give you another example. Star Saxton, she came on, and she is known as someone who does not, how can I put it? She's very much against grades, letter grades. She's all about having the kids develop the rubrics. And I don't want to speak for her, but her work speaks for itself. She's amazing. But she talks about how she used to be a czar. She used to wield grades like a dangerous weapon, is what she said. Those were her words on the episode. She would wield them like a weapon. And she would be proud of the fact that only 40% of her class passed a test. And then one day, her son came home, and he had this thing called a progress-based report card. And she couldn't believe it. She's like, I've never seen anything like that before. What in the world is this? And she learned more about her son from this report card and the details that it showed than anything that she's ever put on a report card. She said, the pre-slug comments like works hard or participates or something like that. We've all seen those report cards. And she said it changed her. And those of you that have read her work and those of you that know Star know she's an amazing advocate for kids, and she knows that it's not about the grades at all. It's about the student work and the student product. But to know where she was and to know where she is now is incredible. And I often say a lot of times we miss out on that journey in between. And it's not our fault. You go on Twitter and you see, or you go on Facebook and you see where someone is now. And you think, well, gosh, I could never be like that. That person's perfect. That person never makes mistakes. Well, no, there was a journey there. We just don't always know about that journey. And the journey is so, so powerful. And we all have our journeys. We're all in the middle of our journey right now. And I'm making mistakes every day. Everyone here listening, I'm sure, is making mistakes, but we're all in the middle of that journey. And it's so important to remember that we're going to continue to make mistakes. And that's okay. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. And that's how it's important to give ourselves a little bit of grace. Dan Tricarico, I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong, the Zen teacher. He talked about that so much, how, teachers are usually the last ones to give themselves grace. And that's a shame because, we spend our days with students and we want our students to give themselves grace. And we try to offer them grace, but a lot of times we don't give ourselves that grace that we extend to students. And we really need to, because you go home, and I've worked with a lot of new teachers before as an assistant principal and a coach. And I'm still guilty of this, but I know there's times where, and I'm quite certain people listening can relate to this. You go home and you think of the one thing that you really screwed up on, instead of thinking of the 10 things that went well. And you're up at night and you're sitting there tossed and turning thinking, gosh, I really messed this up. And it's okay to want to get better. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we don't think about are the 8 or 9 or 10 things that we did really well. And we've got to change that. We've got to change that mindset. Nothing wrong with thinking about trying to improve. But you know what? We're a lot better than we give ourselves credit for. And I see that a lot. I see it in teachers. I see it in educators. I see people getting worn down. And there have been times where I've been there. Trust me. I fully understand. And yes, I see someone saying we can be our own worst enemies. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, it's so easy to be hard on ourselves because we're going to screw up every day. I mean, that's just going to happen. We're going to make about 5,000 decisions every day. And we're going to make a lot of mistakes every day. But I mean, listening to some of the folks on my bad, knowing their stories, knowing where they are now, it's given me such hope. It's given me a lift to know that, you know what, Dave Burgess, for example, he came on and talked about a lesson that just bombed. I mean, I'm thinking, what? Dave Burgess bombed a lesson? There is no way kids did not focus every ounce of their energy on him. He came on and talked about a lesson that absolutely bombed. Anybody that hears that, and anybody that's ever heard Dave Burgess, that's got to give you a little a little hope to know, you know what, you're allowed to bomb a lesson too. You're allowed to bomb some lessons. And Dave Burgess, and he said he did 2 years in a row, the same lesson. He bombed a lesson 2 years in a row. And eventually, I won't go into the whole story, but once he got feedback from the kids, he realized basically that he had been doing something wrong in the lesson, and he changed it. And he figured out how to make it work, and the next time he did it, it did work. But he changed. It's just, it's so important. And I hope folks that have never heard my bad in this, trust me, I don't make any money off of this. I want you to listen to some of the episodes and realize, you know what? Okay, I see. I'm not so bad after all. Jeff Kubiak, he had a recent episode. And those of you that ever follow or might follow Jeff Kubiak on Twitter know that this guy puts out nothing but positive vibes. I mean, he is, and I have to say the word dude, because Jeff uses the word dude all the time. He is a positive dude. That is in his vocabulary, and it is genuine. He is from California. He is nothing but positive. He talked about when he first started teaching, if kids did not have their desks clean, he would flip them. He would turn it over, empty out their desk. He said there'd be kids crying. He came on and shared about a time where he took the class outside and they had an outside activity and there was a kid that was goofing off. And so he said, get over there. You need to get over there and sit down. Well, it came time to go back in. They had done the lesson. It came time to go back in. They had gone back in the building through a different way. And the bell rang and it was 3:04, 3:05. And all of a sudden this parent comes in with an angry kid. And it was the kid that he had told to sit down, that he had left outside for 2.5 hours by himself because he had totally forgotten that he had told that kid to sit down, and they had went in a different way. He was horrified. Jeff was in the interview, he says, he was tearing up just thinking about it. This is Jeff Kubiak. Now I'm telling you, if you don't know who I'm talking about, he's nothing but positive. Go on his Twitter feed and look, and you will see what I'm talking about. But when you see that, you're thinking, how on earth could how could Jeff ever do that? There's no way the same guy that puts positive quotes out every hour would have ever done something like that. He did. And this isn't a judgment on Jeff. This is to say that, you know what? We all grow. We're all in a process. And we're not ever who we were. We're always growing. And I've used this example several times, and it's one of my favorite speeches. Matthew McConaughey gave a speech, I don't know when it was, a couple years ago, I think, when he won an Academy Award. And someone asked him who his hero was. And he said, you know what? My hero is me in 5 years. And then when I get to that next point, my hero is going to be me in 5 more years. He's always trying to grow. And I thought that was really interesting and really a cool way to put that. I did not see it coming, and I've used that example several times because I think it's just so cool. It was an amazing thing. He is engaging. He's wonderful. And I mean, that was just, I thought, wow, that is a cool way to put that. So I'm hoping after hearing a couple of these stories, after hearing me talk about how powerful vulnerability is, I'm hoping that some of you will take a step tomorrow, even if it's just with one person. Maybe it's with your staff. Maybe it's with your family. Maybe it's with your kids. Maybe it's with your spouse, your significant other. Because what that's going to do is give them the courage to do the same, and it's going to help them, not feel so bad. Those of you that have kids, they're going to mess up a lot, just like we did. But we don't want them to think, you know what, okay, I got in trouble at school, I messed up, I'm horrible. We want them to get better. But let them know that you messed up too. You weren't perfect. I'm not perfect. I mean, my daughter, I think, what if I had never shared that with her? Would she have continued on in that practice? Would she still be playing soccer? Or would she have said, you know what, Daddy, take me home? Would she have been a bucket of tears? But she wasn't. She didn't have a worry in the world. She was like, you know what, Daddy, I'm just like you. And I'm thinking, wow, that's powerful. That's pretty cool. So I don't know if anybody has any questions regarding vulnerability or regarding sharing mistakes, but I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Great. Well, John, first, I want to thank you so much for sharing all these stories. You inspired me tonight. You have me thinking. Thinking of everything. I know there's something now that I want to go to address tomorrow when I get to school, first thing, because you just
Right?
had me thinking of something that happened today and I need to address that. So that's what was playing on my mind today. I want to share with everybody that's watching now or even the recording. Follow John. You're not going to be disappointed. He's on Twitter, Jon Harper 70BD. You have to follow him. And then his My Bad podcast. And he just started a new podcast too, Teacher's Aid. So follow both of those. Two podcasts, but I'm sure you can get all the links to it if you follow him on Twitter. So, John, thank you so much. You were inspiring. You always inspire me. I tell you that all the time. I read all your stuff. You have me in tears most time when I read your stuff. So thank you. You can tell you write from your heart. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. It's an honor coming on.
Oh, thank you.